Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan. Thanks for joining us for our Monday weather update for February the 27th. We're tracking low pressure in the tropics and another low near East Cape, and high pressure near the Chatham Islands, over the Tasman Sea, and also building out here in the Indian Ocean, moving in towards the Southern Ocean and southern parts of Australia. That next big high is likely to come into the New Zealand area around about a week's time. So it could be an important feature as we're dealing with tropical storms, as this one here may well be near Vanuatu. This one could form into a tropical cyclone. There's a couple of other low pressure zones nearby in the Coral Sea. Now, when it's like this, with so many low pressure zones, sometimes it can all consolidate into one area. Other times it can break apart and one low steals a bit of energy from the other one, and you end up with a couple of storms, but neither of them are as bad as they could be. So there's still a bit of, we still need a few more days to kind of lock in what is going to happen up here in the tropics. But most of the computer modelling tends to agree that it's likely to track in this same direction where this other low is lying. Now, this other normal low pressure system is tapping into a bit of subtropical airflow, and that's the reason why you're seeing those rain warnings and the risks for thunderstorms. Now, the thunderstorms, that's something that we should pay a bit more attention to. Not so much because you might get a boom of thunder and a flash of lightning, whatever, but more importantly, the rain it creates. We saw this in Mangawhai on Friday, and we saw it in Auckland City on January 27th. That's another layer of rain on top of the rain that's already forecast, and that secondary layer can be much worse, can be far more problematic than the sort of standard rain warnings. So that's why when you hear thunderstorms and flash floods and things like that in the forecast, it might totally break your rain total that's expected. And so whenever you hear the words thunderstorms or afternoon downpours, and certainly when you hear the words flash floods, that means that the general forecast for your region could change. And the rainfall, as we saw in Mangawhai, 300 millimetres or so falling. I mean, there's been just such huge amounts of rain falling in some of these northern areas lately because of stalled systems. Basically what we saw on January 27th was afternoon downpours that bubbled up and didn't move on, and so Auckland got flooded, but areas just nearby had very little, and that's a classic example of these afternoon downpours. Now, as we go into Tuesday, the downpours, the risk of them sort of falls apart as the low moves further away, and now we're seeing rain up the east coast, staying there, but not as bad as it's been. But there could still be another 20 or 30 millimetres to come through before this finally clears away. A bit of high pressure in between, and that remains there until Wednesday, starts to break a bit on Wednesday afternoon around the southwestern corner of the South Island, but still settled here in the north as the low in the tropics gets a little larger and maybe a little more organised. Now, by Thursday, this computer model shows why there's a bit of confusion as to what's going to happen. So you saw one big low, and now it's starting to split into two, which is certainly possible. We're seeing that in a number of the computer models that are predicting the tracking. Now, the low that's bringing the rain for today, Monday, is cleared away by Thursday. We've got a small one out here in the Tasman that basically falls apart. And so on Friday, we've got the big high coming out of the Indian Ocean that is stretching out to the Tasman Sea. That's good news at trying to protect us from those storms to the north. However, the storm's close enough to be on our radar. That's the reason why you're hearing about it. So as we go into the weekend, the tracking that you're seeing here from America is sort of consistent to what we were seeing last week. I say sort of because the modeling's been very messy with this. With Gabrielle, what was it, 8-9 days in advance, we saw what was coming and the track barely moved, and the depth of the storm barely budged as well. Whereas with this, it's changing. As you saw then, there was one and now there's two. Air pressure, 980s in this one and 990s in that one. It was down to 958 with Gabrielle. So there's still a bit of uncertainty with these, but the good news is seeing it pushed away from us is good. That's what we want to be seeing. And compare that with the European model for Saturday as well, shows a very similar setup. Two lows side by side, high pressure in the Tasman, growing, although it's not close enough for the North Island for you to totally be okay, don't have to worry about it. And so you need to keep up to date with our updates across this week. We'll be providing a daily update on what's going on with the tropics, and obviously keep up with Met Service because they'll be the ones officially tracking it as it comes into the New Zealand area. But it's not named at this time, and it may still be a couple of days away before that happens. And like I say, the tracking at the moment seems to be to the northeast of New Zealand, but it's certainly close enough to keep an eye on, because that tracking, it could still change over the coming days. That is all from me. Enjoy the sunshine, or at least the dry weather that is returning to northern New Zealand for a time this week. There is some positive weather out there. And for those in the south where it's very dry, one good thing is you've got a bit of rain coming through at the weekend, maybe 30 millimetres for Southland and coastal Otago, which I'm sure will be very welcome. That is all from me. Back again on Tuesday with our next update.